Hey guys, it's Hazza here, and I wanted to make a video, just a video talking about Call of Duty Zombies, because basically I'm going to be reading from a script, because what I've actually done is I've actually posted something on the sort of Call of Duty Zombies subreddit, and I'll put in some sort of some videos, just to sort of explain what I mean occasionally. So basically, as of last night, so as of last night, I finished the Blood of the Dead Easter egg, which meant I knew like one of the big thing that happened in the Blood of the Dead Easter egg, but I didn't know any of the sort of details about what actually happens, which I was really happy for because it meant that I got to make my own opinion on them. And basically, just very quickly, I'm going to just, from this point on, it's going to be like full spoilers for everything that happens. So, if we watch the Blood of the Dead ending cutscene, we see, we basically see the Primus crew plus post-Revelations Richtofen minus Primus Richtofen on the ground. And then basically what happens is post-Revelations Richtofen goes over to Nikolai. After Nikolai is like, well, have we won then? And they haven't won, but basically Nikolai makes a comment saying, oh, I hope I don't have to arrest my immortal soul or something like that. Something along those lines. And post-Revelations Richtofen comes over and says, you won't have to. He gives him the Chronorium and tells him that he needs to read it and discover his fate. And then says, and this is the key thing that I think a lot of people have overlooked, is that post-Revelations Richtofen, or Richtofen Prime as I like to call him, because that's what Mr. Offwaffles called him, basically says that he'll need his soul in order to defeat Dr. Monty. So Dr. Monty being one of the former sort of team players, now the antagonist in Black Ops 4 in the Aether story. He'll need his soul to defeat Dr. Monty. And then goes on, and then obviously Primus Richtofen dies, and obviously it's all very sad, and everyone leaves that area, leaving Primus Richtofen there, just his body to die, which is a shame. They should have buried him, really. That would have been nice. But whatever. And then one of the things I've also seen, which obviously I haven't done yet, is the classified Easter egg cutscene. I don't think, honestly, I'll ever do. I'm never going to be good enough to get to around 150 in zombies, even if they do fix the crashing. I'd like to think that maybe I could do, but I don't think it's ever going to happen. So I watched it, and one of the big things that sort of stood out to me is how much more confident Nikolai is in that cutscene. When you compare it to the way that he is in the Blood of the Dead cutscene, he's very sort of taken aback and very sort of not timid, but just sort of like, you saying I'm the leader? Like, whoa, like I'm just some Russian guy that's been following this other dude around. And he doesn't voice that, but just in the way that his lines are delivered, he seems a bit unsure of himself. But when he comes into Classified, one of the things that really makes me laugh is that the portal. So basically, what happens is, Ultimus Nikolai makes a comment about how, oh, the Americans give me my vodka still, and I find that so funny because the portal that the Primus crew plus Richtofen, who knows who that Richtofen is, I believe it's post-Revelations Richtofen after a costume change, but that is to be decided and confirmed. But then the portal opens, everyone steps through, and as Nikolai is stepping through, he's like, is that all you want to be, Nikolai? Blah, blah, blah. Like, he comes up with like a sort of a witty, like, wise person quip to sort of shame Nikolai. And what makes me laugh is that he obviously wasn't there to hear that. So he's clearly like read in the Chronorium that Nikolai is going to say this thing. And he's like, oh, when I walk through, I've got to come up with like the best line. He's like, oh, I've got to come up with a really witty line. Oh, it's going to be something about him not reaching his potential or something like that. Anyway, back to the actual point. He's much more of a leader, and in less than 30 seconds to a minute, in talking to the Ultimus characters, the other three characters do not say anything. They are following Nikolai without question. And in just a few seconds, he's able to sort of he speaks to the Ultimus crew like they should let him be their leader. Like he's speaking with such confidence. It's like, you need to follow me. We need to go and do something. I have no time to explain why, but you need to come and do something. Like to beat the Great War and to defeat Dr. Monty. He doesn't actually say Dr. Monty, but he does mention the Great War. But that's such a stark contrast to the way that he is in Blood of the Dead that I can't help but feel like there is a major event that takes place between those cutscenes that affects Nikolai and the rest of that crew in such a way that they follow him without question. And Nikolai has this air of confidence about him, which I think is really, really cool. I really, really like it. What that event is, I believe it's going to be the first DLC map of the Aether story. I think that the DLC season is going to be laid out as being 2 Aether maps and 2 Chaos maps. I think that's the fairest way that they can do it. And I think that it being only 2 Aether maps and them having to do sort of a finale to that means that the story can't be as, I don't want to say convoluted, but more complex. I don't think it can be as complex as what some other content creators on YouTube involved in the story might like it to be. I just don't see it being that complex. There is going to be 2 Chaos maps, and there's probably only going to be 4 maps total. So we essentially have one more map of setup, and then the last map has to be the Great War. There's no way around it. So that sort of leans into my theory that I think people are looking at this sort of, they're reaching too deep and missing the stuff that's on the surface. So let's get talking about what my actual theory is. Again, I'm going to put the Reddit post in the description in case you want to read it. Just like as like a sort of reference to saying like this is what I think it's going to be. But basically, one of the things that Rickson Prime says to Nikolai in that Blood of the Dead cutscene is he will need his soul to defeat Dr. Monty. Now, I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed the timeline when that came out for Zombies Chronicles. Like, I read that thing front to back, and while I can't recall every single line off the top of my head, I do remember some parts. And one of those parts was about a very particular place that's actually quite important to the story because it's where the crew, like the people in the story, are able to source a very important item, something that we have in Blood of the Dead. I am, of course, talking about Base Zero, which is in the Empty Earth, the Empty Earth being a dimension. It's not given a dimension number, I believe it is just called the Empty Earth. So, just to sort of catch you up, basically what happened is Maxis, the one that's in the house, was really bored. He was looking after Samantha and Eddie. So he thought, right, okay, so I'm sort of watching Dr. Monty and then just chilling in my house. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at my teleporter and just let's go and look at a few other dimensions. So he's looking at a few other dimensions and eventually he finds the Empty Earth. Now, the empty Earth is, as I understand it, a dimension in which human life never came to exist. Like, it's just plants and animals and all sorts. Like, there's no human life there. But what Maxis does find is that he's not the first person to find the empty Earth. What has actually happened is alternate Maxis, a Maxis from another dimension that I don't think we ever actually meet, has found it and has set up a base there, and this base is called Zero Base. And this Zero Base is the place where alternate Maxis sort of uses as a base of operations. And what he does is he uses it to sort of obtain artifacts and replicas of items throughout the timelines. And it goes into how sort of Maxis tried to manipulate the empty Earth and caused reality to... I've got the text here. He attempts to manipulate the empty Earth, create a reality too fragile to be sustained. So I don't know whether that talks about the empty Earth reality or an entirely new reality. But what we do know is that what happened after is that, I'm not sure exactly how, I need to look into it more, but it turned out that this alternate Maxis had found the Chronorium somehow, somewhere, and stored it in Zero Base. And so what happened is Richtofen, knowing that he needed to read the Chronorium to figure everything out, because he knew what it was, basically, he basically enlisted Victus, so that's Stuhlinger, Misty, that crew, basically the transit crew, to go and get this Chronorium for him. So they had to go to Zero Base. And if you read the comics, the Zombies comics from Dark Horse, that follows this journey of the transit crew of Victus going through various sort of secret bases, eventually finding themselves in the empty Earth, finding Zero Base. And towards the end of that, of what happens there, is that the transit crew think that, oh yeah, this is fantastic, this is really, really cool. And then Russman is talking to the Richtofen that's in his head, saying, oh, everyone wants to stay here, this place is amazing, because it is really cool. Like, there's no one there, and there's zombies around, but they're not, like, loads. And they could, like, make a life there, but Richtofen's like, well, no, because there's a problem. The empty Earth never originally had human life, and by bringing human life here, you've started causing the sort of temporal, like, it refers to it as sort of like the temporal, like, plane or something to unravel. And basically, he's saying that the empty Earth, the dimension, was starting to unravel and just disappear into nothing, basically. And the longer they stayed there, the faster it's going to happen. So Russman has to go back and sort of explain everything and go and carry on and whatever. I'm sorry I have to keep going on. I'm sorry I have to, like, explain all this, but it's really important. Basically, yeah. So Russman goes back and explains everything. There's a bit of a tussle between the two groups, between Russman and the other three. But then zombies come in and they start running away, and they're like, and Russman's like, we need to leave. We've been given a job. We need to do something. We need to go back. We've been promised a reward from Richtofen to get him this Chronorium. So they get this Chronorium, and so they get to the portal. At this point, other than the tree that sort of disappeared into dust, we've not seen in the comics, we've not seen the empty Earth start to collapse. Like, they're not running away from, like, that scene in Wreck-It Ralph where, like, the game world is, like, disappearing into nothing. They're not running away from anything like that. They ran away from some zombies and stuff, but, like, when they get to the area, when they get to the end of their, like, stint in the empty Earth, they're not running away from anything. And in fact, what happens is a portal opens, and Russman's like, right, come on, we've got to get the Chronorium back to Richtofen. And the other three are like, well, I have no idea what's through that portal, but I know what's here. There are some zombies around, and you've told me that that the world is collapsing, but I've not seen any proof of that. So what's going on? Like, why would I leave? The problems that I face here are known. The problems that I face through that portal are unknown. And Russman just turns around and says, well, I'm sorry, but I've got a job to do, basically. And he just leaves without a second word. And the other members just eventually agree that they can't let Russman do this thing by himself. They were a team and they were better off together. My point here is that the empty Earth has not collapsed before Victus leave. My point here is that the empty Earth has not collapsed before Victus leave. So, Victus get back, and they're put on ice. Young Richtofen has the Chronorium, everything goes on, and then eventually our crew gets to Blood of the Dead, where the Chronorium changes and everything, and the cycle breaks, blah, 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 blah. And we now are in completely unknown where we do not know the cycle. However, one thing that we do know is that Richtofen Prime has said, hey, you need to have your soul to be able to defeat Dr. Monty. In the timeline, when talking about Zero Base, it says, now this entry is called the Chronorium Secured. And it says, among the artifacts that Maxis collected in Zero Base is an ancient book known as the Chronorium, a complete chronicle of the entire history and future of all reality. Protected by various countermeasures, the facility can only be accessed by those possessing a soul. Now, Treyarch wrote this timeline, they hashed out this timeline probably early 2017, when development on like the story elements of Black Ops 4 had just started. They could have come up with any excuse to make it so that Victus, with the crew that had to go to the place to Zero Base to get the Chronorium. They could have come up with any excuse. It could have just been the Primus people were busy, young Richtofen was busy, older Richtofen was busy. It could have been that it was coded by their blood or something like that, because they do take blood. But no, the words they specifically use, like in the first, and I can't stress this enough, this was written in the first year of Black Ops 4's development, when these story and design decisions are being made, that protected by various countermeasures, the facility can only be accessed by those possessing a soul. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a massive flag to me. That says to me that more than likely we need to go to Zero Base for something, and we need to go before that fabric of reality crumbles into nothing. Now, you may be asking, why do we need to go to Zero Base? Why do they need to go to Zero Base? And so, another detail that we get from these same from these same entries in the timeline, specifically from the second one, which details the discovery of the empty Earth, will tell us that this is from the rediscovery of the empty Earth in the Zombies timeline. And it says, having observed Monty for some time, Maxis uses the teleporter in the basement of the house to study and explore other dimensions. Among them is the empty Earth, where an alternate Maxis has constructed Zero Base, a facility that houses artifacts and replicas collected from a multitude of different timelines. However, his attempts to manipulate the empty Earth create a reality too fragile to be sustained. I think, I've literally just read that. I think that actually makes way more sense. So I think the word his is actually referring to alternate Maxis and not House Maxis. So what he's saying is that his attempts to manipulate the empty Earth has made the empty Earth a reality that's too fragile to be sustained, so it's beginning to unravel. So I've just read that a second time, but the thing that I want to point out is that it houses many artifacts and replicas collected from a multitude of different timelines. So he's collected all sorts, and if you look at the Zombies comic, there's a frame that actually shows some of the stuff that he's collected, because it's just all sat there in piles. There's stuff like the goldenrod there, the rocket shield, Ted, the transit bus driver. But one of the big things is there's an Origin staff just sat there. It's just sat there in a big pile of stuff. Like, there is clearly so much really important stuff. The goldenrod is there. The goldenrod, which was once upon a time this really powerful artifact, is just sat there. Like, I can't begin to sort of explain how mad this is. That this, like, there is going to be all sorts of stuff in this Zero base that could be useful. And one of the things that could be useful is something that we've already seen. We've already seen it. Something that we've already seen, the Blood of the Dead cutscene. I'm not talking about the summoning key. I'm talking about something that is shown to be very powerful. Something that apparently is more powerful than the summoning key. But we've seen it. We know sort of details about it. We know that it is very much associated with the Great War, which is what this storyline is going to be concluded with, clearly. And we know that it has 3 counterparts that we do not have in our possession. I'm obviously talking about the Firestone. The Firestone that Richtofen Prime comes into the boss fight with and just goes whoosh, and like this big like red thing comes everywhere, and there's just like it just goes like there's big like waves, and just like it's mad. It's absolutely bonkers. But we don't have the Lightning Stone, we don't have the Wind Stone, and we don't have the Ice Stone. Where do you think those are? Because I think that they're in Zero base. So my theory, overall, just to conclude, is that the first DLC story, the first DLC map for the Aether story will be the Primus crew minus Primus Richtofen plus post-Revelations Richtofen heading to Zero base, trying to obtain the other 3 elemental stones before the empty Earth's fabric of reality dissolves into nothing. And I think that's going to be a really, really cool map, because there's going to be so much classic zombie stuff there. Like, we're already talking Transit Bus Driver, Rocket Shield, Goldenrod. Who knows what else we might find? You know, every single wonder weapon, you know, the Wunderwaffe, you know, the jet gun, all that kind of stuff. Even like stuff like the Sliquifier from Die Rise, like, just to be able to use that again would be really cool. And like the flipper thing from Die Rise as well, that was always really fun. But yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think that it's very likely. Because I think that a quest like that to go to Zero base, one, has the impact that would be required to transform Nikolai into the leader that we see in the classified cutscene. But also, I think that the simplicity of it and sort of the ease at which you can put together a sort of story. It's like, well, we obviously need to go to Zero base to get these things. We can do a quick zip in and out of classified to get the Ultimus characters after that, and then we're ready. Then we're ready for the big fight with Dr. Monty. And I think that is simple enough to sort of... It is simple enough to fit into the restriction of only being able to have one more setup map. Like, we could get a bunch of stuff while we're in Zero base. Like, it might not even be the elemental stones. But yeah, that's what I think is going to happen. I really can't wait. I'm really excited to just see what it is. Because it won't be long now before we start seeing news about DLC 1. It'll probably, we might see it get a trailer towards the end of December for beginning of January launch. So that's going to be it from me. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed my theory, my ranting. Again, I'm going to put the Reddit post that I first posted this theory in the description if you want to have a quick read of that. It's probably been written a bit more concisely and less rambly like this video was. So thank you very much for watching. This has been Hazza, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.